Former manager ends my job at the company I loved. I helped end his career forever. I worked at a very big tech company for a very long time, like decades. Over the years, I have worked my way up from being an OBE to a kind of specialist fixer. I became fairly well known internally as a security/emergency response person. I got to sign the bad or unfixable projects, many of which made news headlines. I have many stories that I can never tell publicly. Sadly, suffice it to say that multiple senior vice presidents in various divisions got to know who I was because I effectively wrangled gnarly and complex problems and herded many intense tech nerds together to resolve big things in multiple divisions over the years. It was so fun. At the time of our story, I was working on a small security team at a product engineering division. It was a somewhat turbulent time, and our team of 8 had weathered multiple reorganizations and had so many manager changes. It was a lot, but we kept our heads down and did the work, and we all got along just fine. Sidebar and relevant later, one of the better managers assigned to run our team immediately assigned me a huge and complicated and urgently important project to manage. It would involve people in 6 different divisions, had seriously big legal implications, and our senior VP wanted it to happen by an aggressive deadline within like 4 to 6 weeks. Oh, and my manager was leaving imminently on a long-planned vacation, so he apologetically would be away for the next 3 weeks and unable to assist. The project was to do something big and technical, and which had never been done before, so no one was entirely sure how to do it. Who all it would require. What steps in what order. Some of the key players had what we gently called difficult personalities. And oh, by the way, it would definitely make international news and cause a ripple in the industry when we did it. No big whoop. Manager was a decent guy, and he felt bad about leaving me with this thorny mess. And I did it. We got all the people from all the divisions in a room and mapped it all out on a whiteboard. It took days and hashed out how to do it before the deadline, actually well before 4 bonus points, and we lined everyone up to get it done before we pulled the actual trigger on the very big thing. I had to attend a meeting with the VP and exec leadership, several levels of management above me, and with the legal team to present the plan and to assure all of the execs that we were ready and had it all handled. So I looked the VP in the eye and assured him that I got this, and then I did. The team did the big thing sooner than the deadline. It was flawless. We wrote that W00T. Just another day at the office, thanks to the inept manager a few months after the epic project. Our good manager left us for another role and someone who moved over from an unrelated division out of nowhere. We'll call them inept manager. Inept manager did not know anything about security. He did not know anything about emergency response. He didn't know anything about what our division did. In fact, no one on our team had ever heard of this guy. He was that worst kind of middle manager, self-important, dismissive of everyone cares most about appearances and ego, micromanages stuff he doesn't comprehend, and just makes everything worse. But he apparently knows people, and those people get him job assignments because of politics. Loyalty. He certainly didn't have any skills or experience for our team. That guy is the worst one of inept managers. Many weird quirks was that he didn't think it was appropriate for our team to disagree with or correct each other in front of other people. Things in tech, specifically product development, move pretty quickly, and things change all the time. So if some of our team was meeting with someone from another team, and someone something like, so we decided to make this guy green and we're on schedule, and someone else on our team chimed in to say, actually, that's changed. We decided that the sky is now going to be blue, and we pushed the deadline back 2 weeks. That just happened in an earlier meeting. Oh, okay, cool. And that the manager would interrupt and say, we clearly need to get on the same page. Let's end this meeting right now and reschedule when my team has all the facts straight. What? That's insane. We literally never have any meetings. If we waited until everyone knew all of the same information all the time, other teams would routinely leave meetings with us with inaccurate info which affected release schedules, resources. It was just a mess. 3 inept manager hostility. Shortly after inept manager became our manager, he started being really hostile to me. Not to everyone on the team, just me. As far as I knew, I hadn't done or said anything to earn his hostility. Suddenly, after 20 plus years at this company, I could do nothing right. While this jerk didn't actually understand most of what my job was, he was sure I wasn't doing it right, and he was quick to tell me so, and often in front of others to the point that my coworkers would take me aside to ask what was going on. I didn't know either. The thing is, I was the only woman on the team, and I have a disability. Now, I've been through some things working in high tech over those decades. It was very much an old boys club back then, and May. I was fine. I'm not one to claim discrimination at the drop of a hat or for no reason. However, when I was trying to piece together the cause of this dude's hostility, some of his comments were sexist and not at all subtle. He also didn't like that due to my disability, and frankly, my seniority, I was given one of the few offices with a door on it in our new building. The rest of our team was in open floor plan cubicles, which everyone hated. He was incensed that I, a lowly direct report and woman, got an office and he didn't. I have more seniority than just about anyone, so even without my disability, I'd have scored the office ahead of him. Note that other men in our division got offices too, because again, seniority. And that bothered him less. But I was the only woman on our floor with a door and I was a subordinate. His ego did not like it, not one bit. He threw a fit about it repeatedly. There were lots of other things, he said. My favorite among them, towards the end, was him reprimanding me for my bad attitude in a meeting we just had. Inept manager had told me beforehand not to say anything during that meeting because he was insisting on sharing incorrect information again, and he knew I'd want to correct it. So I sat quietly and kept my eyes on the PowerPoint presentation or the floor nearly the whole time. When I asked him how I had a bad attitude when I hadn't said anything as he'd requested, I didn't like the look on your face. Okay, dude. After realizing there was nothing I could do to make this guy happy with my work and to lose his hostility, I finally went to HR to go on the record. I knew they'd do fuck all about it, but I wanted to document it, at least so predictably. They told me to work harder at getting along with a new manager, and because it wasn't my first rodeo, I went back to my office and emailed HR, saying, "Thanks for meeting with me about my concerns about an app manager. I fear his bias and misogyny will reflect negatively in my next performance review. HR should be aware that there is a real problem here and I hope you'll take steps, etc., etc., which of course they didn't. But now it was on the record, the X-Files. And then a few months later, he gave me a terrible performance review as expected. Long story, already long. He was trying to fire me for underperformance. Unfortunately for me, the company had started rounds of layoffs all over, and it was the worst possible time to be looking for another job internally. And now I had a bad performance review on my record too. I went back to HR and said the thing I said. I was worried would happen when we met 6 months ago. That happened exactly as I said. Now what? HR, once again, was no help. Also, they've done literally nothing. But hey, it was on the record again. Helpful for the attorney later, blah, blah, blah. When I realized I couldn't find a new gig at my company because of all of the layoffs. Sigh. I sought a new job for much more money at a different local tech company. And pretty quickly, I live in a tech-heavy area. There was lots of shuffling between 3 to 4 big companies during this time period, and we'd often bump into other company veterans at these other companies. It was a small world with my track record and references. It was super easy. After that was lined up, I called an employment discrimination attorney to negotiate my exit from the company I thought I'd work at until I retired. Sad face because I had documentation with HR explaining enough managers, misogyny, enablers. I'm going back for some time, and because they'd done fuck all about it, and because there were witnesses who confirmed his behavior, they had no leg to stand on. They agreed to write me a relatively nice check to go away and to not sue them, and I agreed to not talk about the details of my separation agreement. I went down to my lawyer's office and signed the agreement. I looked to see who had signed the agreement for the company. I assumed it would be someone in HR, but it was still black. I'd eventually get a copy once someone there signed it. I took my check and packed up my office and left my old company. I started my new job a few weeks later. Karma begins. This was August 2, that year that I left. I got my copy of the executed contract in the mail in October. Who signed it for the company? Not HR, but my exec VP, the one who asked for the urgent, highly important, legally complicated project. The guy I looked in the eye personally and then delivered on this very big thing. He personally asked for. Before the deadline he asked for, that is, he signed off on my separation agreement. I suspect that he had no idea until that moment that I was gone, and I imagine that he likely had many questions about WTF it happened, and also why did they have to pay me a chunk of money on the way out. Whoops. I chortled when I saw him since the VP knew me, and we had some history, and the manager was new to the division, and was one of hundreds of middle managers he'd likely never heard of. I'm guessing enough manager had some explaining to do. Wahahaha. I really enjoyed the thought of that. Why? Karma for reals. Cut to November. As I mentioned, it was a relatively small tech community in the area, and those of us who worked in security, in particular, a company X would often encounter other current/former colleagues, a company Y or Z or whatever. Heck, there was a ton of poaching going on between the companies. One day I got a in-company chat from someone who'd worked in security at my old company. We'll call her security colleague. Security colleague asked me if I knew someone named Enough Manager. Why, yes, I did. Why? Because an app manager was appearing on security colleagues scheduled to interview for an open management position the very next day. It seems that shortly after my former exec VP had signed my separation agreement contract, an app manager was actively looking for a new job at a new company. Hey, security colleague asked me what I thought about an app manager. I said, I can't really talk about it for legal reasons, which, boom, everyone knows what that means. But if you wanted to ring my personal cell phone later this evening to catch up on old times, please do. She did. I hypothetically shared some stories with her about an app manager. I also told her whereas hot buttons are the appearance logical thing, the dominant stuff, etc., etc. And all about his misogyny and ableism, which was perfect since she was conducting his interview. I may have shared some specific scenarios like questions to ask, which I knew would set him off. I wished her luck, and for the love of all that is holy, to please call me after when appropriate and tell me how it all went. It did not go well for an app manager. When security colleague rang me, I couldn't wait. How did it go? Well, he got combative and angry and yelled at me twice during his interview to be hired as a manager. Facepalm. There were lots more details now lost to time except at that company. Interviews loops were assessed as such strong hire for this role hire, but not for this role. Not a good fit for this job. But we like them. No hire. No hire ever. Not for any role in app managers. Interview was rated that last one. No hire ever blacklisted from any job ever at one of the biggest tech companies in the world, after being pushed out the door of one of the other biggest tech companies in the world. Shortly after that, it appeared that an app manager moved himself and his wife and kids a few states away to work at a smaller company in another region. It took less than 6 months from when I left my old company for him to be gone as well. Hey, what gets me still is that an app manager thought I was so inconsequential, so unimportant that he didn't bother to check and see where I landed after he forced me out of the company I loved, and what he had to look for a job himself shortly thereafter. It also never occurred to him that I'd have connections with thousands of colleagues I've worked with over the years, some of whom could now be working at company X or Y or Z, where he was interviewing and where it scored a huge raise for myself. To this day, he doesn't know why his interview with company Y tanked so badly, and since security colleague was not legally precluded from sharing stories, she had heard through the grapevine about an active manager's management problems. It's possible that other of our old security colleagues at Company Z and other companies in this area heard those stories too, which means he's unlikely to get a job at any major tech company in this area, maybe ever. Definitely not at X or Y. And they are big companies among the biggest.